Hi, everybody. It's Kevin Kane from the GIS facility here at Iowa State. And I just wanted to run through a project that we're working with the ISU library on and some of the things that will be part of that project. We're putting together a proposal, but I thought actually showing you what was contained and what we see the project looking like in the future might be helpful. So let's dig into that a little bit. To get us started, I've put together a project description page on the web. It's called Historical GIS of Iowa State University Buildings and Grounds. And I first started thinking about this project in 2008, around the time of the Iowa State Sesquicentennial. During that time, a page was put together by the ISU library, which looked at historic photos of landscapes and buildings on the Iowa State campus. This is the page. It's still up. And as you can see, the first photograph is one of the older photographs that's in the collection, looking from about where the Memorial Union is now across to Old Main and some of the first buildings that were on that part of campus. As you can see, some of the older buildings each have a page attached to each one of them. This happens to be Alumni Hall. And I thought this was a really great way to present this. There's some interesting facts about each one of the buildings. There are small photos that you can click on and see the building in different times. So that's really where the idea got generated to do this. And I'm just picking up on that to take it maybe a step further. So what we're proposing is to take these pieces that other people have already put together and bring them into one spot where people can go to and look up different times, different maps, and different periods of early Iowa State history. Look at the buildings as they were during that time, click on the buildings, get information about the buildings, and some photographs, maybe some other data about each one of the buildings. So I've started to put together some of this, and I just wanted to give you an idea of what the project looks like right now and the potential it has in the future. First, let's take a look at some of the historic maps that are available on the web right now that we just pulled down and put into the GIS to start looking at. There are two main places where these maps were downloaded from. One was the Iowa State Library Digital Collections, and that looks like this. It's got a list of maps that are in the collection and some of the digitizing that's been done to bring those maps to the web. You can see there's quite a variety and different dates of those maps, and we've just taken a few of those and started to put those in. This is one of them, and this will be one of the main maps that I show you here in the preliminary GIS that we've put together. This is an 1896 map. You can see it's a TIFF file that you can zoom in and out of. This is Old Main. This is the depot at the time with the dinky railroad running past it. And this is Morrill Hall here. So we'll take this map and I'll show you how we digitized and put that into the GIS system, and we're able to overlay that on current maps to show you where these buildings actually stood during that time period of 1896. The other place where we've taken maps from is from facilities planning and management. These are maps that it looks like someone took these early maps and made a more draft board ready version of some of these maps. You can see these are similar maps, but they're drawn, it looks like a little bit more precisely. I'm sure some artistic interpretation was taken in putting them together. But they're very nice maps, and we're going to use those as well as we put the data together and do our overlays. So those are the two places on the web that we took these maps from. Once the maps were downloaded, we were able to put them into the GIS system and do something that's called georeferencing the maps. And that's about taking these old maps and placing them on a current mapping structure. This happens to be OpenStreetMap that you can get from the web. It's in the background. It shows all the ISU buildings as they sit right now. And so we used some of the same landmarks that were still found in 1890, or are still found today, that were first found in the maps in 1896 to do the georeferencing. Once you take that map, that 1896 map, and put it on top of the current map, it looks something like this. So now you're able to see what that 1896 map looked like when it's overlaid. And you get a pretty good feel. It's remarkably close, the overlays of the building from 1896 to currently. So the current buildings are in gray on this map. The old map outline of Morrill Hall is in the black. And so it's very close. The overlay the georeferencing did a really nice job putting those together. So this starts to give you a very good idea of the 1896 buildings versus current buildings. We can pan around the map, zoom in and zoom out. You can see the old depot, which is number 15. We have a key down here in the bottom left. The depot's right here. This is what will become the hub. It will be moved to the north and turned on its axis about 90 degrees, and that's where it sits today. It also shows Old Main in comparison to where Beardshire Hall was, which is interesting. When you read the literature, it shows, it talks about the buildings being in a similar place, but this actually shows you in relative detail where the footprint of this building was compared to Beardshire Hall. Okay, so let's zoom back out again to the extent of the 1896 map. And I'll start to show you what kind of things we can do now that we have the 1896 map overlaid with the current map. Of course, we can take all kinds of other data besides the current street map and overlay the old map on that. And they might include USGS maps. They also can include satellite maps. And we'll just zoom in here. This is Google satellite map. And so it shows the 1896 map on top of the current satellite map. Just to show you how this overlays, we'll take the old railroad line, the old dinky line, and you can see that the sidewalk that runs in between Beardshire and Morrill Hall now and goes over to Cat Hall is approximately the same place where the old dinky line was. It varies a little bit from here to there, but That old railroad line is the sidewalk that goes in front of Cat Hall, behind the farmhouse, next to landscape architecture, and then out east of campus past the power plant. So a lot of landmarks from 1896 are still part of the current Iowa State infrastructure, including this railroad on top of the sidewalks. We can also place old aerial photography. So this happens to be an aerial photograph from the 1930s. So this places the 1896 map and the buildings and the railroads and the roads on top of 1930s. So you can do some analysis of what was there, what wasn't there in the 1930s. You can see that Margaret Hall, which was the women's hall, back in 1896, the boundaries were there. And then by the late 1930s, that building had burned, and now it's no longer here in the 1930 era photographs. So you start seeing some of the changes in where the buildings are, how they were built onto, and all sorts of things like that. Okay, I'm just going to go back to the map that we had up, go back to the area where our map, 1896 map overlaid, and show you the next phase of the project that we're working on, which is zooming into these old buildings and actually digitizing them. And as a result of that, you get polygons that actually have a database built around them of the old buildings. We can name those buildings, and I'm just using on this this overlay, I'm using the old building names that were on the 1896 map. And you'll see as we overlay these different time periods that buildings change their name over time based on their usage. We can also digitize the roads. So we have the roads, the rail network, so that when we take away the original map, the 1896 map, we now have an overlay of a GIS coverage that shows all the old buildings, their names, the road network, everything that was on the 1896 map has now been digitized and is in a new format. Along with the digitizing, then we can also assign a database. And so when I click on Morrill Hall, up here in the database, you can see that, let me do that again. You can see that inside the database, and I'll just expand that a little bit. We've included a building number from the key, the name of the building, a path to show where you can find information on the web about that building, the date that it was built, and then a separate photo that we'll keep in a file that just shows the front of each one of the buildings. So the old maps start to become GIS coverage, and we can do all kinds of things with that GIS coverage. One of the things that we can do is click on Morrill Hall, click on the web page that talks about Morrill Hall, click on that, and it pops up the page that we've decided to use for Morrill Hall. This goes back to the Sequicentennial web pages again, and you're able to look at different photos of the building from different time periods, some interior shots. So having that database allows you to do a lot of different kind of things as far as clicking on some of the polygons, showing photos, showing websites, getting information about when the buildings were built, when they were raised, all kinds of information like that. Now we've done something similar with some of the other maps. I'll just clear this information from 1896. We've also overlaid an 1891 map, and that's an interesting, different looking map. All of these are very artistic, some of the old maps, and you can see that. So here again are some of the old buildings. This is 5 years earlier, but because we've digitized the map, we can put the buildings from 1896 right on top of that. You can see Morrill Hall and the main building were in the, of course, we're in the same place. They both existed in both 1891 and 1896. However, the depot was a much smaller building in 1891 and was between 1891 and 1896 was enlarged or else raised, and a new building was put in its place, which is probably what happened. Over here to the north and the east, this is Margaret Hall again, and you can see that the annex of Margaret Hall was around in 1891, but between 1891 and 1896, Margaret Hall itself was built just to the south of the original annex and was attached to that building. So this allows us to do lots of really nifty things as far as overlaying on the maps is concerned. That's 1891. We've also put in some older maps. This is a 1919 map. And again, you can put in the 1896 buildings on top and see the changes that occurred during that time. And then also the 1923 map, which is a little bit different map again. And then on top of that, what we've done is put in the just building center points for the buildings in 1923. And then also the center points for the buildings in 1919. So you get an idea of how these overlapped, how close the maps were to each other. I'll just put in the 1896 again on top of that map. And you can see, once again, how close these different maps, now we have 4 maps layered on top of each other. And Morrill Hall is always in a very short distance from each other. So these maps, even though they were, some of them were hand-drawn, they were done in fairly well enough that taking the landmarks, we can place them on top of each other on a current map. Hopefully that gives you a good idea of what the GIS system, how the GIS system will bring together the information that we're accumulating from the major texts, the historic maps and the historic photos, bring them together in one system. As we build data, there's going to be plenty more that we can do and overlay and show, find new ways of showing how the buildings and grounds of the Iowa State University campus has grown over time. As I said earlier, we're putting together a proposal with the Iowa State Library to put this project together. We've met with library staff, and we hope to continue working with them to bring in more information, more maps that we can find, do some digging in the archives and find some things that we haven't found before. And so we'll put together that proposal, spread this information out a little bit more so more people are aware of the project, find partners that are interested in this type of project, and start building from there. Our original piece that we're hoping to build is going to be between the founding of the university in 1858 and 1900. So we'll start with that time period, gather all the information that we can, and go from there. Thanks for watching. I hope this gave you an idea of what we're up to in this project. Thanks.